For more on that, we're now joined by Aziz Abusara. He's an analyst, author, and CEO of Mejdi Tours, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining, Aziz.
Thank you, Ariel. It's good to be with you.
Aziz, just last year, you ran as a candidate for the mayor of Jerusalem, the first Palestinian to do so, at least since 1948, and you gained a lot of support then, but also quite some threats from both sides that finally made you quit, and a lot has changed for Jerusalem since then. And I want to start by asking you about Netanyahu's annexation plan and what impact do you think it would have on Jerusalem?
Thank you. Well, yes, a lot has happened since then. I think the problem with the annexation is it creates a new situation of where Jerusalem is now. So you taking a model that has failed completely in East Jerusalem and applying it in the West Bank. And I would say it has more to do, or there's more to learn for the Palestinians in the West Bank, in the areas where this annexation is happening, from what happened to us in Jerusalem, and take those lessons and understand that trusting and believing in a lot of the condemnations and so on from the Palestinian Authority has not helped us in East Jerusalem for the last 50 years. And there needs to be a much more innovative thinking of how to deal with the annexation than just sitting and waiting and hoping something will miraculously change.
Yeah, we'll talk in a second then about the reactions within the Palestinian Authority. There is growing concern within the Arab world regarding the annexation plan and what that could mean for the future Palestinian state, for example. But what do you make of the plan generally, the plan of the century issued by Trump, and then the annexation plan as it's formulated, as far as we know, by Netanyahu? Is it all bad, or can you see some good sides to it? For example, some sort of recognition in a Palestinian state?
I don't think it's all bad, but I don't think that because of the recognition of a Palestinian state. I think we are coming to an understanding because of this plan, probably, that perhaps the dream of a Palestinian state is not realistic, as some officials in the Likud and in the Israeli government have recently assured leaders in the settlement movement that a Palestinian state will not exist. So we have to face reality as is. And in some ways, there's something to be grateful for with this plan, is saying, look, here's the reality, and it's not what you want. Now you need to act accordingly. The only people, I think, is still believing in the two states as imagined by the Oslo Agreement are the Palestinian president and his people. Most of Palestinians are giving up on that dream. Many Israelis are really giving up on that dream. The question is, what's next? And in some ways, the Trump plan is forcing us to start thinking about what's next for us. What do we have to imagine now? We need to start getting more innovative and understand how it's going to affect us, this change. Do we really need the Palestinian Authority to exist any longer? Is a question many Palestinians are now asking.
Yeah, I see that on the ground, because there are demonstrations that are organized against annexation, and you see, for example, that only a couple dozen people show up. We saw demonstrations about taxation a few months ago that brought hundreds to the streets, or thousands in Ramallah. So let's talk a little bit about the reactions. You spoke within people, or among people. What about among the leaders? They seem to be quite silent.
Yeah, because they don't have much to offer. I mean, what does the Palestinian Authority really has in response to the annexation? The Arab world is not really showing as a strong support as they used to in the past. The diplomatic arm of the Arab world is not really as helpful as it used to. The most they are getting from Europe and from some officials in the United States is some kind of timid condemnation. And so they don't have really a lot to do, and they don't have any power. I mean, Palestinian Prime Minister threatened a few days ago that, oh, if this happens, we will announce a Palestinian state on the whole land from the river to the sea. So what? You know, you make such a declaration. Is it going to really make any difference on the ground? So they don't really have much to offer, and they, in some ways, afraid that they don't have the streets with them. People have lost faith in the Palestinian leadership, in the Palestinian Authority. We've got so many promises through the years that haven't happened. And in some ways, the Palestinian Authority is reaping what they sowed already. of weakening the civil society, weakening any even nonviolent protests against them. And now they can't get those people out when they need them to protest against Israel annexation. So it's no surprise that very few people are out in the streets.
And those people would support, I imagine, the idea of a dual state, a country that is a home to both Palestinians and Israelis with equal rights. Is that what you're insinuating?
Well, especially among young Palestinians, you see a significant growth of people who say, you know what, we got nothing from Oslo. Actually, our lives since Oslo until now has got so much worse that it is much better for us to consider either one binational state or some kind of a federal system, something that actually will give us something. So it's not because people really don't want a Palestinian state, it's just they don't see the reality of that anymore happening. And younger Palestinians, which are the majority of Palestinians, about 70% of Palestinians are under 35, are saying that. Now, the leadership is all people like, I don't know, 65, 70 and older. So they now really connected to that younger people vision, and that have a break between the two.
Yeah, we're hearing you, but I think we lost the video connection for a second. But, oh, there you are. You're back. I want to change gear, Aziz, in the next 2 minutes that we have left and ask you about how you're coping with COVID-19, not only personally as you reside in Washington, D.C., but also because you have a tourism company that brings a lot of tourists to Israel and the West Bank, across the Middle East as well. What do you think of the future of tourism, and how is it going to look like until a vaccine is available, and also what's keeping you busy now that tourism is basically on hold?
Well, this is a really hard time for people in the travel industry. You know, 10% of the global GDP is dependent on tourism. And so you can imagine how many people are suffering. I think everybody I know in the travel industry is basically with no income. We haven't got any income in travel for the last, three and a half months. So it's a tough time.
So what's keeping you busy?
So with that, we are staying busy thinking about adjusting, learning how to do travel differently. And I just finished writing and publishing my book about travel, Crossing Boundaries, A Traveler's Guide to World Peace, which actually kind of is the right time for it, because I argue in it that it's time for us to change the way we travel. That travel shouldn't be only about an Instagram photo and shouldn't be only about the top 10 destinations you should go to see, including in Israel and Palestine. It should be about connection. It should be about creating a relationship with the people where you travel. And last year we had...
Thank you. Yes. Sadly, we must part here, but thanks so much for joining us from Washington, and thank you for your insight. We're taking a short break now. When we get back, all the latest news on COVID-19 in Israel. We'll be right back.